Hello and welcome everyone. This is Sia Kal with FY USA. Today's webinar is about how to choose the right business coach for your accounting firm. Our agenda for today is divided in three different sections. The first section, we're talking about the attributes of the coach. If you are considering working with a business coach, what attributes you should be looking for in that coach, and also what questions you should be asking that coach. The second part of our agenda has to do with setting the right expectations and defining the scope with your business coach. And finally, measuring the results of your coaching engagement and all the ethical considerations in working with a business coach. These are the three different areas that I think is mostly important to you as an accounting firm when you are looking to work with a business coach. So without further delay, let's get into it, guys. Why are we focusing on the business coach at this point? Well, in my experience, I've seen that there's been a lot of work that has been done on accounting firms and what they should and shouldn't be doing, but there's not enough guidance in terms of, well, how do you choose the right business coach for your accounting firm? So we're hoping by the end of this very quick and short webinar, you're able to determine, or at least have the tools to be able to determine if the coach you are considering is the right fit for your firm or not. One of the things that happens when you are engaged with a business coach is that you will see in time that that coach will be impacting the rest of your business. They can influence your workflow, your revenue, your profitability, and your team. Those are the makings of your firm. So it's important to make sure that you have the right coach, the right fit for what you need. So with that in mind, let's get into the first part of our agenda, the attributes of a coach. What attributes should your coach possess? That's really the DNA of your business coach. And there are a few things to consider. The top important items for you to, in fact, pay attention to is making sure that your coach possesses good technical and soft skills. It's important to have both of those things. Technical skills, not just understanding how an accounting firm operates, but also understanding the best practices. And as well as soft skills, because it really takes those types of skills in order to properly communicate the best practices to you as a partner, or your partners, your senior managers, and your team. So it needs to be a combination of those skill sets within your business coach in order for this to be successful. And then, of course, long-term visionary. You want a business coach that doesn't just look into what's happening to you today or what you need today, but also what is your firm going to look like in about 3 years time or in 5 years. And if they're not putting that on your radar, then you're not getting all that you deserve in terms of the coaching experience with your business coach. So they need to have a long-term vision in terms of what are the best practices and how he can or she can help you get to where you want to get to, not just next year or the year after that, but also in 5 years' time. And then, of course, the third thing that I would look into is technical versus big picture stuff. You need the tactical and the big picture. Tactical because you do need the tactics, the strategies you need to navigate the changes that you need to make in your firm. But the big picture items are just as important because you need to know how the tactical things you're working on is actually supporting your big picture goals. So you need a business coach that can give you the right combination of both of those things. And then, of course, I will look into a business coach that has great people development skills, because this is not just about coaching you in terms of just spending time talking to you. This is much more in depth than that. This involves changing systems and processes sometimes navigating the firm's operations, sometimes setting a more ambitious goal and bringing everyone on board to work towards that goal. So if your business coach possesses the people development skills, then they will be successful in implementing all those things with you, with your senior management, with your team, and you will get much better results a lot quicker. So those are the attributes that I will look into with a business coach. Now, also, you may be considering, well, if I am looking at to possibly working with a business coach, what questions should I be asking Sia? And there are many questions I can think of you could be asking, but let's go ahead and focus on the top 3 questions you should be asking your business coach. Top 3 questions. The first thing I would ask is that, well, what is your process? Because a successful, experienced coach will have way more than just great talking points. What they will have for you is a process that they walk their clients through in order to help the client achieve their goals and overcome their challenges in their accounting firm. So that requires a system that they have been using, and they can share that with you. Now, not all processes are created equal, but at least you need to know what their process is in order to properly evaluate it. And be careful that that is different, and be able to distinguish that from just, you know, being able to talk every once in a while, or talk once every 2 weeks or once a week. This is actually a system, a process in place to bring about improvement in an accounting firm. So you want to ask about, well, what is your process? The second question I would ask is, how much time are you able to commit? And the reason why I would ask that question is because most business coaches that I know, they have this business model in their mind, the way they do business. And the way they do it is that they have a monthly fee that they charge, and you multiply that by the number of clients they have, and that's their revenue base. Now, that's not the way we work, but at any rate, with that kind of a business model for them, it tends to have a different result, which means that the more number of clients, the better it is for them. And what that ends up happening is that it leaves very little time to properly address the improvement strategies that each firm needs. Furthermore, most business coaches are literally solo practitioners. And, you know, my thought has always been, and my approach has been that, look, improving an accounting firm, it takes a village to do that. It's not a one-person show. So one person alone cannot have that kind of impact on your firm. You really need a good team behind you to support you, to take you to that next level. And so that's the reason why I would ask, well, how much time are you able to commit to improving our firms? It would be quite important. The third thing is that, what is your method to develop people? You know, I mentioned earlier the attributes you should be looking for is people development in your business coach. And that goes right along with this question. This is designed for you to ascertain some information from your coach, whether this is on their radar, and what method they actually use to develop people. That includes you as a partner, your team. And by the way, as I mentioned, in terms of processes, not all methods are created equal either. So, but it's important for you to know what method they use so you can do the proper evaluation. So these are the 3 main questions that I encourage you to ask anyone who is seeking to be your business coach. Moving on to our second section of our agenda. We first talked about attributes and questions to ask your coach, and now we're getting to setting expectations. And we want to make sure that you're setting the right expectations, right? So here are 5 ways to set realistic expectations. You know, when you're talking about expectations, it needs to have a nice synergy with reality, right? You want expectations that are ambitious, but also realistic at the same time. So in order to do that, in my experience, I've seen that there are 5 ways that you can really set realistic expectations. And by the way, you should be doing that with your clients as well. But this is what you can do also with your business coach to make sure that you are setting realistic expectations. You should be defining the importance of your short-term versus long-term gain. What are you trying to gain from this engagement? What's short-term important to you? What is a long-term important goal in this engagement for you, so that you can have a better understanding and clarity on maybe there's something in your firm that really needs the attention of your business coach right this second. Or it could be something that long-term you've had such success up to this point, and long-term you want to have even bigger success or a different type of innovation within your firm. So you need to be able to distinguish and have a better understanding of your short-term versus your long-term gain. And then the second thing I would define is the realistic goals that are achievable, knowing yourself and knowing your team. I can't tell you enough that no one really knows you and your team than you and your team. Then the reason why I say that is because if you have a business coach that comes into your world and comes into your firm, that coach has no idea about you or your team. And I'm talking about not just about the operations, but I'm talking about your attributes and your team's attributes, and each one of you is very different, is very unique. There's no way a business coach can know all that information. So that burden falls on you regardless of how much of an expertise you think your business coach is bringing on board. That for you to properly set some goals that you think are achievable, knowing what you know about yourself and what you know about your team. And that's quite crucial in order to make sure that you're not missing the mark. And the third thing I would define is actions to take after each meeting. You know, every business coach will set up some intervals of meetings with you online or in person. It's important for you to, coming out of each meeting, have a very specific list of actions that you should be, in fact, taking. So I would pay attention very close to what are the actions, and make sure that you don't get into this habit of just conversing with your business coach, but really at the end of the meeting, you may even feel really great, but you have no clarity on what actions you should be taking. The fourth thing that I would define is how accessible is your coach in between the meetings. That is crucial because, in my opinion, what I tell the partners that work with me is that, look, what you do in between the meetings is far more important than what you actually say and do in the meetings with me. And the reason for that is because all the heavy lifting happens in between the meetings. And so it's important that your business coach is in fact accessible. And when I say accessible, not just via email, but also by phone, by another Zoom meeting, in person, maybe sometimes. So it's important for you to have the proper support, not just in that 1 hour of conversation with your firm, with your business coach, but also in the time in between those, the meetings that you have with them. So make sure that you define that as well. And then, of course, last but certainly not the least, your participation versus your team's participation. You know, I mentioned this earlier, that you know, improving an accounting firm, it takes a village. It's a team effort. And if you have a business coach that's just focused on you and you alone and nothing else, I would really consider them more of a personal coach, maybe what you would consider an executive coach. But I don't know if that person would be a business coach, because when you're talking about your business is way more than just you. Yes, you are the leader of your business, but your business has many components, and those components include your team. So you want to be able to have clarity on what is required of you in terms of participation and what is expected from your team. And if your team is not even in the conversation or in part of the picture of this particular item, then I don't think that would be the right direction you're going. If you are thinking about improving your business, if you're just focused on improving you, then sure. But improving your business requires more than just improving you. So keep that in mind. These are the 5 things that I would define in setting expectations. Moving on to the next important component is defining the scope with your business coach. So you've set the right expectations, the realistic expectations. So how can you further define the scope working with your business coach? To clarify, the scope. You want to make sure you have an understanding of what's included and what's not included. So with that in mind, what you do want to understand is the goals and the length of the engagement. The goals and the length of the engagement. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Not just in your business, but in the engagement with the business coach. And the length of the engagement. It needs to have a beginning, a middle, and the end. You know, I know that firms are always evolving and there's always more goals and more things that you are trying to achieve. But it's important that your engagement has a purpose. And it's not just this ongoing engagement where there's no ending. Because if there is an ending, then we know that at that point, with that during that time frame, you are seeking a very specific goal. And that's important to be clarified within the scope. The second thing you want to clarify is proper diagnosis of your firm. And that is probably the biggest, the most missed step when I hear business coaches working with accounting firms. This one thing is everything. And the reason why I say that is because regardless of the experience that the business coach is bringing into the picture, regardless of how many times they've done this, there are very specific things that are unique to you and your firm. Yes, all accounting firms have similar challenges. Yes, they all want to achieve certain similar things like bigger revenue, bigger profitability, more efficiency, sure. But how you go about fixing those things and what order the solution should take place, it really depends on very, very unique things that are very distinguishable in your firm with you and your team and your processes. And there are no two firms that are alike in that sense. So it's important that proper diagnosis is taking place. A business coach should really take their time to understand who you are, who your team is, and how your firm operates, not just by asking you questions, but by taking the time to put together a sort of a 360 perspective of who you are as a business. And that takes time. There's no shortcutting that. And when you shortcut that, you are now just increasing your risk of putting some solutions in place when in fact those solutions are not properly addressing the underlying issues. So proper diagnosis of your firm is quite important. The third thing I would look to clarify is how to accomplish each goal that you're setting in your engagement. And that includes methodology and process. And remember, we talked about methodologies and process in the previous sections. This should be defined very well in your scope. And again, methodologies and processes are not created equal across the board, but once you agree on certain methodologies and processes you're accepting on behalf of your business coach, then that should be clearly articulated in the scope. The fourth thing is specific training requirement. Look, as your coach does a proper diagnosis of your firm, they're going to realize that there are certain training areas that may be needed. It may not, but there's a chance that there's training needed here and there. And so what you want to do is define those trainings and whether your coach is able to provide those trainings or you need to seek those trainings elsewhere. But you want to have that understanding of what's happening and not presume that whether it is your business coach or it isn't your business coach, but to actually have clarity on this topic of training. So those are the things I will clarify. Now, if you are now working with a business coach and some time has passed, well, how do you measure the results? And look, there's really a simple answer to this in measuring the results. It's just that making sure that you're doing it consistently is the key here. And in measuring results, really there are two things you should be looking for. The results you're getting from your firm and the results you're getting from your coach. And those are the same, but not quite. They're a little bit different. So let me explain to you the difference between the two. When it comes to the firm, you're going to measure the firm targets, you're going to measure the partner targets, and you're going to measure the team targets. And so there will be KPIs. There'll be numerical and non-numerical KPIs and metrics that you're going to be working with. And so for your firm is, of course, you know, if you have targets for the firm and you haven't set targets for yourself as a partner and for the team, I don't think you're going to be able to hit your firm targets. I don't think that's possible. You may hit some, but that doesn't mean that you're going about it the right way. It really requires your team and yourself to have very specific KPIs and metrics so that collectively as a team, you guys can hit firm targets. And then for your coach, I would certainly look at meeting all firm targets. So if you have, in fact, met all your target KPIs for your firm, then sure, your coach should deserve a little bit of credit for that. But also making sure that you have clear and sufficient tactical instructions from your coach. And you know how you know whether you're getting proper, clear, and sufficient tactical instructions? You can measure that very, very easily by the level of frustration in following the instructions of your business coach. That means that once you're getting the instructions, if you are very clear on how to follow those instructions and how to implement them, then sure, you have clear and sufficient tactical instructions. But if you find yourself that you take the recommendations of your business coach and you have to go and do your own research and figure things out on your own, then you're not getting the proper instructions you really need and should receive. So clear and sufficient tactical instructions are quite important. And finally, accountability. Is your coach holding you accountable? You know, you are already surrounded with people that more likely than not, they're working for you, right? Most of them do. If you don't have, if you have other partners where you're at sort of equal level, but most of these people, they work with you. And so there's a tendency for them to be very agreeable. And what you want in your business coach is someone who actually holds you accountable and makes sure that once we have an agreement of what we're going to do with the firm, that we stick to it and we don't deviate from the plans without justification. So it's important for you to ascertain the level of accountability from your business coach. So those are the two things I will look for in measuring the results. But now let's get into ethical considerations. What are the ethical considerations when you are working with a business coach? And really, when we're talking about ethical considerations, we're really talking about one thing, and that is just conflict of interest. You know, if there is a competing interests here between what's important to you and what's important to your business coach, then we have a conflict of interest. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. You know, before we go into the details here, most business coaches don't really look at themselves as fiduciaries to the accounting firms. That's because they see themselves differently from attorneys and from doctors and perhaps from accountants. But in reality, we all owe a fiduciary duty to accounting firms. As business coaches, we owe that to you. So it's important that when you're dealing with a business coach, when you're working with them, they actually raise the bar, the standard of ethics than what currently is in the coaching profession. So what do I mean by that? Raising the ethical bar means that they don't come in and they don't implement things in your firm that are unethical. And you may think that those things maybe are very obvious, but they sometimes could be very subtle, and they may have the color of business tactics, meaning that they're being looked at as these are just smart business decisions. And a lot of times those very smart business decisions are unethical. So it's important that when your business coach comes into the picture, that they're implementing things that are actually morally right and they're not wrong. Because if the only thing that your coach, your business coach is caring about is that how can we get from point A to point B, whatever it takes, then you have ethical considerations in that scenario. So the second thing I would look at is hype and Kool-Aid syndrome. So what do I mean by hype and Kool-Aid syndrome? If you have been long enough on social media, you have seen there's a big space in social media where there's a lot of hype and there's a lot of business coaches that sell some Kool-Aid in terms of how things should be done. It's important that what attracts your attention is not necessarily beneficial for you. So be alert that you're not buying into a methodology just because the person that is delivering it is very persuasive. That you take your time and you pause and you think about what it is that is actually being offered here, and you with a sober mind synthesize that and bounce it off of other people to make sure that you're not just blindly following a perhaps a very popular fad, perhaps, and that in fact that there's a well-founded reason for why this process or methodology is being promoted on any platform. The third thing is feeding your intellect versus feeding your greed. Look, this is, when I say this is, let's talk about the elephant in the room, that is what it is. You know, we at FY USA, our focus is what do we do with our time here on earth matters to us. And what we mean by that is that, yes, we want to help you become successful, but we care about the journey and we care about who we become collectively when we do that. And so it's important that your business coach is not just focused on let me just help you make more money. You know, that is not very fulfilling and satisfying to the leaders that are visionaries and they lead by example. And what they accomplish is far greater than just increased revenue and profitability. Of course, they get those things, but that's because their focus is on something entirely different. And it's important for your business coach to have the emotional and intellectual maturity to understand the difference so that they can bring you on that journey where when we come to the end of it, that we look at ourselves and we like who we have become during that journey. Okay. And then the fourth thing is rock star mentality versus team mentality. Look, when you have a business coach that is very much team oriented, that you're going to see that it is not about the coach themselves. It's not about I, but it's about, look, here's what we can accomplish together. Here's what we can do together. And they're not spending a lot of time taking credit for things. Instead, they realize, look, the truth of the matter is, I'll give you an example. I personally, I'm a collection of many talented and skillful individuals who spend countless hours with me over a span of 20, 30 years. And if it wasn't because of them, I wouldn't be sitting over here being able to talk about these things. And so it's important for us to realize that there is no one person alone that is, what's the word, self-made, if I may. That we are a collection of the support that we've received from others. And if your business coach has that understanding, then they'll be able to surround you with the support system that you need and be able to bring your team on board to get the things done. However, a rock star mentality is completely a different ballgame. And we're moving on to the number 5, leading by example. It's important for you to observe the things that are being preached to you from your business coach is actually being put in practice. This is how you know whether that person is bringing that self-discipline into the picture. And because that person can be able to actually show you better how you can implement the things that they're recommending to you versus just telling you. You know, this is how you stay connected with the accounting. As a business coach, I always think to myself, as long as I am implementing the things I am preaching, that I'm able to know the challenges and the things that need to occur in order for me to get to my goals. So where I speak from, it comes from my own personal experience, and people relate to that a lot better. And frankly, you have a lot more credibility that way than if you are preaching but really not practicing, if you know what I mean. Okay. All right. So those are the 5 things that I would consider in terms of ethical considerations. And just remember, for any kind of future questions that you may have, please feel free to reach us. You can reach me directly at scal@fyinternational.com. I'm happy to answer questions for you. If you'd like to learn more about FY USA, you can find us at www.fy-usa.com. We are present on social media, and I hope to hear from you. Otherwise, I am expecting great things from your firms, and feel free to reach out to me for any further questions you may have. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you next time on the next webinar.